Welcome to my next SPFBO video. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you have no idea what SPFBO is, it is a fantasy competition that is ran every single year, and this is my second year being a judge for it. I will leave two things down below. I will leave the link to Mark Lawrence's blog, which is where the competition is ran, so you can understand like the rules and stuff, as well as a video that I have made on the topic of SPFBO and what exactly it is. So if you want to, you can go watch and read those and inform yourself a little bit more about the competition. But honestly, all you need to know is in this video, I am reading and reviewing books that other judging teams have put forth as finalists. I have to score them out of 10. I'll be using a weighted rating system to do that. It is how I rate every single book on my channel. So I have 5 categories, and then enjoyment is weighted double the amount of all the other categories because it is the thing that matters the most to me in my reading. They go on a table and one book is the winner once all the other judges, there's 10 of us, have also done the same thing as me. I will leave the previous installments of my SPFBO videos down below. There's me picking my finalist as well as me reading the first batch of finalists. Without further ado, we can talk about the books because I started one already. I started the Humane Society of Creatures and Cryptids yesterday. I was actually very hesitant about this one because I often say that I'm allergic to cozy. I personally am definitely more of a fan of like darker themes, and I don't really love like cozy stories. I really want stakes in my books, things like that. I am 30% into this book, and I didn't realize I was 30% into this book. I have just been flying through this book, not wanting to put it down. I'm enjoying it very, very, very much, which is a complete surprise to me and a very exciting surprise. I love when a book can shock me and just like make me so invested so early on. This story involves 3 sisters who run a sanctuary for magical animals, essentially. They have this land that their family has owned for a long time, and then people came around and made a town around them. They are seen as weird because they are hiding a secret from the rest of the town. No one else can know about the magical creatures because they want to preserve them. They want to make sure they're safe. They don't want people to use them for like money and treat them cruelly and stuff like that. So they are hiding the fact that they have magical animals on their land from the rest of the town. So the town thinks of them as witches. They think they're weird. They persecute them. We're following 3 sisters as they deal with the town, their own lives with the magical creatures. And I think that there's something that's going to happen to the sanctuary. I actually have not read the synopsis of this. I actually went into all the SPFBO books pretty blind just because I had to read them. They're books that I'm told I need to read and judge for this competition. So I didn't feel like I needed to read the synopsis beforehand. And it's been pleasantly surprising learning about this. I really enjoy the sibling dynamic. It's pretty much a big buzzword for me. I love sisters specifically. I mean, I love siblings in any story, but I am a sister and I can very much relate to younger sibling things. I can very much relate to having an overprotective big sister. This one also is a middle child, and I just have always thought that siblings are something that really is really interesting to look at because we definitely have vibes of a sibling. Like, I feel like you can really categorize people into older sibling, middle sibling, youngest sibling, no other siblings. Like, we all are raised somehow differently based on where we are on that list. So I feel like a lot of youngest siblings hold a lot of same qualities, and a lot of older siblings hold a lot of like same qualities. They're a lot more responsible a lot of the time. Not that younger siblings can't be responsible, but I just do think that there is like an interesting thing to look at. It's something I look at with all my friends. I mean, I am the younger sibling, but my boyfriend's the older sibling, and there are traits that he shares with my sister, and I share traits with his younger sibling quite a bit, especially in just like the way we think or react to things. So it's something that really, really fascinates me, and I love to read about it, and I just love the like bond that siblings have. It's something so interesting because it's something so like unbreakable and it's so different than anything else. Like, you get on each other's nerves so much, but you love each other so much, and so it's something that like I seriously love to read about, and I'm loving it in this as all 3 of these sisters are going through very similar things, but they're handling them very differently, how they interact with each other, things like that. But I'm also very intrigued by their own storylines because each sibling has a role to play in the story and at this sanctuary, and they all are kind of having outside influence for the first time because they've been very sheltered and very hidden in their sanctuary because the world is kind of cruel to them. So as we see them make friends for the first time outside of the sanctuary or inside the sanctuary or things like that, I've really like been very interested in that. I have an idea of where the story is going to go. I mean, there's a character here that I think is pretty obvious that he's not doing what he says he's doing. Like, he's not there for the right reasons, but he's starting to really feel for this sanctuary and these siblings and things like that. So I'm very interested to see what that has in store. I also just think that I really gravitate to stories about a sanctuary of animals. I think that's something I would love to dive more into. I think I said in my previous SPFBO video that I read Fablehaven as a kid. I love the Fablehaven series, and something I loved about it was this magical world set within our world that like we didn't know about, and it made me me be like, could I drink the fairy water and then see fairies? And I think that this one also, I love the idea of like Bigfoot is in these woods, or like these creatures. I don't know. I just like really like it. It also reminds me in some aspects of my Senlin safety net pick, which was A Rose Among Thorns, because it has similar vibes with just like the setting. The actual stories are completely different, but like the setting itself, I think I really enjoyed in A Rose Among Thorns, and I'm enjoying here. I love this like secret magical oasis essentially that someone is dying to protect, like is going to do anything and everything to protect it from the outside world and from evil people. And it's really, really, really working for me at this moment in time. I'm enjoying it. I don't want to put it down. I want to know what's happening next. I want to see the little queer romance that's happening within it. I'm like with this 16-year-old girl finding her first girlfriend. Like, I'm really vibing. I do think that the writing is a little bit of its downfall. The dialogue itself, I notice, is a little bit weaker. I think dialogue is very hard to do, and I definitely noticed that it's a little choppy and a little bit like in my face a little bit. Like, I don't think the dialogue flows as nicely as it could. So I think that is like something that I have noticed, but overall I'm just still really engaged in the story, and I am liking the pace and stuff like that. I guess we'll see from here where my thoughts go. I'm about 30% in currently. I think I'm going to fly through this one. Good morning. I have made it 60-ish% into this book. God, I need coffee this morning. I'm so tired. We have family in from out of the country, so we've done a lot of like family stuff, and it's also Christmas time, so a lot of extra family stuff on top of that, and I find peopling so draining. I am not a people person. As outgoing as I can be, as outgoing as people say I am, I definitely still need time to myself. I definitely need to go lay in my bed and just be silent for a day sometimes. So like, I am very weird because I'm also outgoing, but I'm an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense, is how I like to say it. Like, I'm a little bit of both, but I definitely come across as a very big extrovert, so everyone always thinks I'm extroverted, but like, I really don't like to leave my house and do things. But like, I also really, really get drained sometimes and need that time to just like be by myself. Anyways, I did make a dent in this book, and I am liking this book, but it's taking me a lot longer to read than I thought it would because of how much I'm enjoying it. But I think one of the things for me is the plot. The plot is pretty see-through. I knew what was gonna go down as soon as things started to happen, and I've just been waiting for the other shoe to drop the entire story. And so when the plot didn't really like pick up, like stakes didn't really escalate into like 50%, but that's 250-ish pages into a 500 plus page book, I just truly think that we could have had some things happen a little bit quicker and add like a little bit of mystery to it. I think the one character should have came a little bit earlier than he did, but I also understand that the reason I'm liking this character so much is because of how much time we've spent with them in that first half of the book, learning about them and their personalities and their lives and their sibling dynamics, and I'm rooting for them because of those aspects. So it's a little bit hard. I just don't think the book needed to be 500 plus pages. I think it would have been a very good 300 or 400 page book. I think it could have been just a little bit more concise, a little bit more faster paced, and I would have really enjoyed it a lot more than I am. I am really enjoying this one. I think that this has been a win for me. I constantly want to listen to it, even though life is getting in the way and I'm not listening to it as much as I thought I would be. Every time I put it on, I don't want to turn it off. Like, I am deeply engaged into the story and the sisters and the characters and what is going to happen and the animals. I'm not as like obsessed with the overall arc of the story as I wanted to be. I just think it dragged out a little bit too long for me. I do think also the dialogue could use a little bit of work, but honestly, writing that isn't polished is not like the biggest negative for me. If I like the writing, even if it has like issues, like I don't think the dialogue is as polished as it could be, I like the writing and that's all that matters to me. I don't really care if grammar is wrong or anything like that. Like, my personal preference, it's not something I'm noticing, especially because I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I feel like you don't really see those mistakes a lot of the time. So writing is hard because it's I find writing very, very subjective at the end of the day, because it's all about what I liked in a story, and if I vibed with the writing, I'm not necessarily marking it on technical skills, which I think a lot of people would be doing, but like, those just don't bother me. I don't know. I'm not an expert in grammar. I actually hate grammar. I'm really bad at it. I am that person that is still probably Googling what an adjective is versus a verb. So outing myself here, but you know, that's the truth of it. Like, I just don't really care about that as much. So it's more if the writing flows, if it works well, if I like it, if I'm engaged in it, things like that. And for this writing, like, I can see how it could be a little bit more polished, but I'm really enjoying it, and that's what matters at the end of the day to me. I'm gonna keep reading. I have to film some videos today because my family is out. My cousin's staying with me, so it's been a little loud in my house. So I haven't been filming, and they're out shopping today, so I need to film. And I need to chug my coffee. Peace. I'll update you. When I'm done this one, I think will be my next update. right. This book completely surprised me. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did, which is something I have really enjoyed about participating in SPFBO every single year, is when a book shocks me. It happens all the time. The first year that I ever read and participated in some way SPFBO was the year that Small Miracles won, and I was expecting to hate that book, and I had such a good time with it. And then last year I was also not expecting to love the winner, and I loved that one. It was my top rated book besides my own pick, and I really was happy with it winning. And so this year I definitely thought that I was gonna hate this one. I definitely was scared of this one. Listen, I said last episode that like the term cozy is just typically not for me, and like when you hear this title, like the Humane Society of Creatures and Cryptids, I automatically thought cozy. Same with like the story, and it is cozy. I'm not gonna say it's not, but the book still has stakes, and it gets a lot darker than I thought it was going to get, and I really appreciate that about it. I really enjoyed this story. I enjoyed how invested I got in the characters. I really was rooting for them at the end. I do think the pacing was off. That's probably the biggest struggle with this book. It did not need to be this long, but overall I enjoyed the writing. I really loved the world building. It felt so rich. I loved how at the start of each chapter we got to learn about one of the creatures that they had in their sanctuary. I really thought that this was done really well, and I had a overall like amazing time reading this. I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than I expected, and I feel like that's such a win, especially because like one of the fun things about SPFBO is how all the judges have different taste, and it introduces indie books to new audiences. I know a lot of people on my channel had no idea what SPFBO was until I started participating in it, and that's a whole new audience that can love the books that I love. And so I'm very happy that I really enjoyed this one, and I would recommend it to people who like this like idea and style of story. I actually really enjoyed it. Let's get into my official scores on this because I'm very excited how much I loved this one. For characters, I gave it an 8. For plot, I gave it a 7. For writing, I gave it an 8. For setting, I gave it a 9. This was so well done, and my enjoyment was an 8.5. I had a wonderful time with this one, which scores it an 8.17, which is an official score of 8 for SPFBO. Very happy about that score. I love loving books. It makes reading a whole lot more fun. And I actually have started our next book as well. I started Runelight. I've been listening to the audiobook. This is addicting. I'm having a great time already. How far am I in? I'm on chapter 7. So like I've made a small dent, but I have made a dent. And this is like the start of part 2. And part 1 had me like sitting on the edge of my seat. Like I was invested into what was about to go down. I don't typically love a time jump, which is what happens between part 1 and part 2, but I understand why there was the time jump, and I'm hoping that I can get reinvested into these characters as they're older now. Something I don't love about time jumps is that like often I feel like characters become somewhat new characters and you have to like relearn to love them, because I mean, if you're skipping 20 years like in this book, I am going to change so much in 20 years. At least I hope I am. I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to adapt, I'm going to change my views on some things. I might not change my views on everything, but some things I'm going to be open to learning about and stuff like that. And so I do think that there is a relearning of a character after a time jump. And so sometimes when I'm so invested already into a character, I'm like, no, but I'm hopeful that it can get me like re-addicted really quickly. And I am really liking the writing style and the tone so far. I'm finding it very addicting. And I mean, Kate Redding is an incredible narrator. I would recommend this audiobook. So hopefully I continue to love this. Let's have this video be the video of wins. Like, what if I love all of them? Wouldn't that be great? Like, I'm an honest reviewer, so I will tell you when I don't love something. I will tell you when I think something is weak for my own opinion. I always like to say my own opinion is this. I think that reading is 100% subjective, and I always try to phrase things as things that I don't prefer or I personally don't like, which apparently can upset a lot of people. But like for me, I don't like when someone says this book is absolutely bad, this writing is bad, this character is horrible, because what if I loved those characters? And I have just found that characters I've thought are one-dimensional, other people have thought are really well fleshed out, and reading is a personal taste and a personal experience, so I only come at it from my own personal experience. I don't have a doctorate, I don't have a degree in writing. I am a 27-year-old girl who likes to read, and I review books on the internet, and that's all I can bring to this space. So thank you for allowing me to bring that to this space, and I hope that I can continue to convince you to read all the books I love, and even the books I don't love. I know so many people pick up books in my comment section because they're like, oh, you didn't like that, but I like that thing, so I'm gonna pick that book up, and then they love it. So thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go continue reading now. I'm about halfway into this book, and guys, I am having a great time. I'm really, really liking the world building in this, the magic system. It feels very unique. It also feels very similar all at once, which I think is something very hard to do, but very good to do, where it's taking all of these things we know quite heavily, like elves and dwarfs and humans, and then also adding elements to it to make it just feel more unique and different than anything else we've read, but play on similar tropes, archetypes, things like that. And I think that that's really hard for an author to do, but when it's done really well, I think it can make a book really shine for me. I feel like the world building feels quite natural too. I don't feel like I'm being overly told things. I feel like I'm learning more as I go, but I'm never like questioning things. I'm never left wondering exactly why things are like that for too long without getting answers. It feels very natural to learn things, and I like our main character. I think it's very natural that she's inquisitive and wanting to learn. She's a storyteller and she likes research, so obviously she's gonna ask questions. So it doesn't feel weird or info dumpy when we get a question and an answer, which can feel so info dumpy, but it's just done really well because it really fits our character. I do think in the last probably like 10%, I have felt like the pacing slowed down a little bit. It's feeling a little bit longer at this moment in time, but overall I've been not wanting to shut the audiobook off. I've been really, really enjoying it. As I said, I really like our character, and we have a side character that I'm really enjoying. Actually, currently this book is traveling, and it's been traveling for quite a long time at this point, probably the last like 30%. I am a stickler. I'm very known for saying I hate traveling books. I hate traveling in stories. I think it's so boring. I think it's never done well. I think that like for the most part it's pointless and I think it takes a lot to be done properly, and I think that it's being done really well here because I'm not bored with the traveling. It doesn't just feel like repetitive. It feels like moments happening to further our plot, further the character development, and it's broken up by the magic system and what's happening. So essentially in this, there's a way to share memories with people, and often in the traveling scenes, after we've been traveling for a little bit, we get a memory and it feels very natural and comes about very like well. And then it breaks up this like boring traveling, oh, we're just walking through the jungle, and it also makes it feel like it's taking more time without just being very repetitive and boring. I really, really like how this traveling is done. I'm actually like really engaged into the story, and that's so rare for me when there's traveling. Like it's a thing that I really complain about, and so I think that this is done so well, and I can appreciate traveling when it is done well. It's just very hard for it to be done well in my opinion. I'm pretty much like very on board with this. I'm having a great time. I'm really hoping that this is a win for me as it continues on because I really like the story. It's also a sibling story at its core, and I love sibling stories. That's like a buzzword for me, and I think that the way it's done feels very natural to what siblings would be like in a scenario like this. Maybe not me and my sibling, but like I definitely could see siblings like this, and there's things that you relate to. So far I'm really, really enjoying it, and I hope it continues that way because like I'm having a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying getting to know our characters. Also, there's our main character, and then there's like the side character that's on this quest with us who's an elf, and their banter together is so good. I love the like grumpy sunshine vibe. It's not romantic at all, but like there's just like a really like sarcastic tone in their conversations that's happening, and like their like hate of each other but like alliance and reluctant allyness I'm really enjoying. As we find our little found family, I feel like all the characters are really speaking to me. They all have voices and they feel very like true to who they are. They might play on archetypes a little bit too much for other people, but I do think that there is enough character in them to make them still stand out to me and not just be their archetypes. I have finished our book, and I overall really did like this one. I do think that the pacing, it went a little too long. I do think that by the end of this book, I was like, okay, this could have been shorter. I did want this to end. I was not as invested into the latter half just because I want to say around like 60 to 80%. I just felt like that dragged a little bit for me. There was a lot of traveling, and I did enjoy the traveling. I think it was broken up pretty well, which is a pretty big compliment from me, but I do think it could have been shortened, and I think that for a book this long, not a whole lot advances within the plot of the story. We do get a lot of character work and a lot of world building within this, and I think that that's a benefit to the story, but like I do wish we saw just a little bit more quickness to the plot, I guess. I did like the ending. I liked the little reveal. I liked the puzzles that were in this. There was the box that was kind of a puzzle, but then there was also the map that showed them the way, and they had to like translate the story and things like that, and I thought there were some really cool and quirky moments to this story. I thought the characters were well done. I overall did enjoy this one. I think a little bit of my issue was, although I said the characters were well done, some of the background characters I think could have had a little bit more development. We did meet a lot of characters in this. Is something I will complain about. When you make me meet so many characters that eventually I don't really remember which character was what, that's a thing that I think I struggle with a lot in books, and that this book book had that kind of impacted my enjoyment at the end. Overall, I liked this book. I didn't love it. I could be convinced to continue, which I think is a compliment to the story. I really enjoyed the overall writing style. I gave characters a 7.5, plot a 6, writing an 8.5, setting an 8, and my enjoyment a 7.5 on this, which rounds to a perfect 7.5 for the official SPFBO score. It's a pretty good score in my opinion. I did really enjoy this one. I would recommend this to a lot of people. I don't have much else to say. I definitely will be trying more from this author. I thought their writing was really good and the world building of the Keeper's world was really good. And this is a new series within the same world as a bunch of their other series. And I never really felt lost or confused about that. And I think that that's a bonus to the story. And I do now want to go check out the other stories. I'm definitely intrigued by them. And I have started our next book as well. I started Gates of Hope and I'm actually 35% in, so I've made a pretty big indent. Overall, I have not a lot of complaints about this. I'm not necessarily loving it. I'm not necessarily invested, but there's nothing wrong with it. I'm enjoying the overall writing style. I think the tone and the narration is pretty good and it's pretty bingeable. I'm reading it pretty quickly, but I'm not necessarily invested into the characters, and I think that's where I'm struggling a little bit. I think the two girls kind of run together a little bit in my head, and it took me a while to realize that we were swapping between two characters, even though they're in very different parts of the world, and I just felt like I was very confused. And I do just want the world building to be explained a little bit more. I have questions and I have things come up and I'm wait, I wish there was a little bit more explanation to the world building, especially the Gates of Hope. So that has me lost a little bit. So I'm hoping as the story continues, I'm gonna really feel connected and I'll get answers and I'll get really pulled into it because as I said, I am enjoying the writing style, and I think that's a big thing that really matters in a story. When you don't like a writing style, it means you don't end up liking characters, which means you don't end up liking the pacing because it just feels so slow and long. So I think enjoying the writing style is a pretty big factor for a lot of other factors in reading, and I'm liking this one. So I think that that is a good thing for the book, and I'm hoping to continue to enjoy it. Something that I'm kind of struggling with in this one is the magic system. I feel like we have 3 characters who are new to magic. They're just learning magic for the first time. They all just realized they had magic, and I don't understand how it works. And so at 50%, the fact that the characters are learning magic, but I have not learned the magic really doesn't work for me. I just am constantly wait, how are we doing this? Or can we do this? And it has been explained in some aspects, but not enough considering one of them is literally in school and learning all of this. I need a more in-depth concept of everything. And then the other thing I think that I'm struggling with is the lack of depth in the characters, but I wouldn't necessarily say just our main characters, but every character. I feel like this book is really missing a bad guy and antagonist. All the characters feel very, very good. It doesn't even have to be a real bad guy. It doesn't have to be the bad villain, but it needs some sort of character that is not the best and maybe has some prejudice against our character to give our character more depth. Does that make sense? I'm trying to think of some examples of this. I don't know, in Game of Thrones, we had the Starks and we were rooting for the Starks, but then we're rooting against the crazy siblings that are sleeping together. Cersei is such a well done character because of who she is, but I think it also adds to the characters in the Starks because you root for them more because you're rooting against this person or this person's being mean to them, I just think that we need something like that in this book to really pull these characters together for me, to give them the hero portrayal that they're trying to get, to make me really root for them and want them to succeed. I just need something else besides they're all good. Every character we've met is just good and good at everything they do and very nice and helpful, and I'm just missing some sort of not nice character. But overall, I'm not hating this book. I personally don't think I'm loving it, but I am intrigued enough. That's my update now. I finished Gates of Hope last night. I ended my 2024 reads with it, and I'll be starting 2025 with SPFBO as well. I liked it and love Gates of Hope. There was just some things that I really wish it had done. I think that was it. This one frustrated me because I saw potential in it for sure. I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was the lack of a plot. This feels wrong to say because there definitely is an overarching plot, but I think if we're going back to my Game of Thrones metaphor from earlier, you always have the greater threat in Game of Thrones. There's always that greater threat that the Ice King, that's what he's called, right? I don't remember currently, is coming and you have to defeat him at the end. That is a thing throughout the entire entire story, and that is the plot. I feel like this story had that. What I feel like this story lacked was the inner plot, like the characters going against each other, the issues each season had. Like each season had conflict that had to be resolved. I feel like this book needed a conflict that had to be resolved in a smaller scale than just the threat lurking in the background, because I feel like it felt so out of reach for me, and I really need something to pull me in and grasp me in the entire story. And I really felt like the two female characters really just read very alike. Honestly, I think all of the characters read alike, but it was easier for me to pinpoint the male character since he was male, but the two females really struggled with. So I think that is a main complaint of mine, but I liked the writing. I liked the direction the story went. I did think that in the latter half we learned more about the magic system and how it worked. I really liked learning the runes and like the way that the emotion poured out. There's a scene about like picking the string that I really liked. I wish we had gotten more of that earlier on in the story. I think that would have helped me enjoy it quicker. I think that would have helped my enjoyment quite a bit because I would have been less confused or lost early on, so I would have just like been able to just enjoy the story for what it was. I think those are my biggest issues. For my official scores for SPFBO, I gave characters a 6, plot a 6, writing a 7, setting a 6.5, and my enjoyment a 7, which rounds the score to a 6.58, which is an official score of 6.5 for SPFBO. I have started our next read though. I did start it last night and this morning, and I have gotten a decent chunk into it. I'm currently 21% into By Blood by Salt. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I am currently. There's still a lot of room for it to change, and my biggest complaint is that the chapter starts don't have the character POV that we're in. I find it very hard when they just switch and I don't know whose POV I'm in. It takes me a while to figure out what character we're in, and I have to wait for like a name to be said or like something to really trigger my memory being like, oh yeah, we're in this part or this part. And we've flipped around a lot, and I do technically prefer stories that are more a small cast that we're just rotating through than having every single character write a POV. I like to have a little bit of mystery to my stories. I think that's why I like to have something that's intriguing to me, and I find when we have a full cast of POVs, I'm missing some of that because theoretically we should know everything because we're in every character's heads. I'm liking the characters. It's been a long time since I've read a military fantasy. I run an entire readathon based around military fantasy because I used to love it so much, but I haven't really read a true military fantasy in a while, so I'm hoping that's where this one leans, that we get to see some strategy, some battles, and some really good character development. I am enjoying the character of James. I like him quite a bit, and the commander that is under a lot of prejudice that's not supposed to be a commander, I have really enjoyed his POVs as well. I'm intrigued to see the mission they're on and the world expand. I love a good coup. A rebellion is something I'm always intrigued about reading about, so I am intrigued by this one. I hope that it continues to pique my interest like it is in this first 20%. I'm so sorry, but I did not update you guys halfway through this book. I actually flew through this one pretty quickly, which I think says a lot about the story. I did actually quite enjoy it. I was surprised because a couple people that I trusted said that they couldn't really connect to characters, and I feel like that's been my biggest issue within SPFBO so far. However, I agree with them. The characters weren't the greatest in this, but the plot really kept me forward in this. I felt like the plot was nuanced. I felt like the plot had so much going on. There was conspiracies. Each character had their own goals that we had to reach before the end of the book, but then there was also this overarching plot that really kept moving forward. I was very much engaged in the world building, the politics, the scheming, everything like that. I do wish we got a little bit more development in the characters. I do think that was this book's downfall for me. If I'd cared just a little bit more, that would have helped. Also, the swapping of POVs is always something that messes with me because I'm like, why am I in this head? I don't care about this character. I do truly just like to follow the same characters over and over again. I honestly don't have much to say about this one. This is why I didn't update in the middle. I kept thinking that I should, but I was like, what am I going to say other than what I'm saying? Like, I liked the things I liked, and I felt like the other things were lacking. This one follows a couple characters as we're essentially following a coup. We follow a character who is of a race that's looked down upon, and we have to follow his prejudice, but he's given higher rank in the army than that he should, and people respect him. There's like a coup to get rid of the king, and the king's younger brother is part of the coup, and we're watching all of that go down, and every POV is interconnected. I did like that. I liked that every POV we had interacted with each other. I don't necessarily like when characters are all over the world because I like seeing their interactions together, and I thought that was really wonderfully done. That like, oh, we followed this military commander and the king's brother went with this military camp, and so there was interactions between these two, or sometimes the brother would have to interact with the king, and there was all of this. I really liked what happened with the demon. I think the first 40% of this book was really good, and then I do feel like there was a middle slot slog for me, and then I really enjoyed the ending again. I really liked the last bit. I could continue the series, which I think is a really, really good thing to say when you're excited to understand what happens next. So I did enjoy this one quite a bit. For official ratings, I gave characters a 6, plot an 8.5, writing an 8, setting an 8, and enjoyment a 7.5, which comes out to a score of 7.58, which is an official score of 7.5 for SPFBO, which I've learned from this competition and from doing booktube that the actual ratings themselves are also subjective. So many people will come here and be like, wow, you didn't like that book, you gave it a 7, and I'm like, that's a good rating. I like to use all 10 points on my rating scale. Like, a 3-star for me means I enjoyed that book. A 2-star means it was boring, and a 1-star means I hated it. But a 3-star is a good read, and a 7.5 correlates to a 3-star for me. But for not everyone, that's not the same. Like, a 3-star for some people is like the worst book they read. Like, reading is so subjective. The terms we use, everything. I don't know what my dryer is doing. I have started the next book though. I did not realize that it was a fantasy romance, so that made me excited. I also did not realize that it was a sapphic fantasy romance, so that also had me excited. So far, I'm liking the story. We're following 2 characters who have a lot of trauma as they have to go into the forest, which is seen as big and bad. I haven't really understood that yet. I wish that we had seen more of the forest being big and bad, but I'm only 20% in, so I'm hoping that we continue to see that as we go. And they're kind of learning each other. They're gonna fall in love as the action happens. But our one character is the last of her race, the Blues, and so she kind of hides herself because they're hunted down for their magic abilities and things like that. And our other character is a mage, and the mage have so much power, but they are held by someone. They have like a keeper most of the time, and the keepers have to keep their power bound essentially by whatever means necessary. The mages are children of the state essentially, unless they marry off, and then when they're married, their spouse gets control of them and is held responsible for them. So if anything goes wrong, if they end up going off the rails and burning down a whole village, the spouse is responsible for that. And we follow these 2 characters who need something from each other. The one person needs a bodyguard to go through the forest to bury her grandmother in their village that they were raised in, that they've been ripped from, and the mage needs to marry someone because she wants out from underneath the state. So far, it's a lot of just like character work and world building, but I am intrigued by it. I'm not bored, which is always a good sign. I am interested in knowing their backstories and the history behind each of them because there is a lot going on. They have a lot of trauma and they're going to bond over it, I think, quite a bit, which is shitty, but is actually often what happens because they can understand each other, because they can come from a place of someone who went through something similar, not the same, but similar. I'm engaged. I definitely am engaged, so that's always a plus. I was actually about to come on here and tell you how much I liked this book because I thought it was over, and then I look down and I have another 100 pages left, and I'm a little scared now because like if this book ended right now, I think I'd be giving it 4 stars. I thought it had perfect plot. I thought it progressed pretty much perfectly. I feel like the pacing was very good. It might have been a little bit long at times, but if there's another 100 pages of this book, what are we even doing? Like, the conflict is resolved. I don't understand. And so like that's a little concerning to me. But where I'm at right now, like I had to hold tears in. This book actually affected me more than I thought it was going to. I actually really enjoyed it. I don't think that the romance was well developed because it does say it's a fantasy romance, and so I definitely will dock points in character work for that, just because like if you are going to market this as a fantasy romance, the romance better be good. It better be a strong element of the story. I feel like these 2 honestly felt more like friends than like romantic interests. However, I loved watching their friendship / relationship blossom. I loved having them go from this like bantery, rival, enemy-ish, annoyance, reluctant ally style to the friendship that they have at the end. Do think that it could have been really well done as like a real romantic part. Like I like the fact that they end up together. However, I just didn't really see the chemistry romantically with them, but I did like their banter. I liked their vibes. So, like I did really enjoy the characters in this. And I really do think that the plot hit some really good points as it went. It didn't meander too long in any spot without any like necessary plot building happen. It is long, so we'll see. We'll see if I change my mind in the next 100 pages of what I think is useless. I'm assuming it's like character development, which like I personally don't need. The plot is resolved. Give me 20 pages and then I'm good to go. We will see. We'll see what my final thoughts are on this because like I did really like it. I think the world building could have been a little bit more well developed, but like my enjoyment was quite high on this one. I actually had a really good time. I finished my last SPFBO book. This one was probably my second favorite in the end. I actually really enjoyed this one. I will say that last hour was pointless and did not need to be there, and I would have liked this book a little bit more if it wasn't there, because it kind of just like ruined the pacing for me, and like, I don't know, we don't need all that extra stuff in my opinion. And that the romance was lacking in this. Like, I didn't love the chemistry of the romance, but I think like they had a really good friendship, so like that really worked for me, and I enjoyed the plot and the storyline, and I thought overall, besides that last hour, the pacing was pretty good. I thought this one was a very enjoyable read, a very easy read, and I liked the writing style quite a bit. I couldn't pinpoint a lot of problems with it for my personal self and what I like in reading, so we're just gonna go over my overall scores. I just feel like this was a pretty well-rounded book. I feel like it did characters well, it did plot well, like nothing in this book was very much lacking for me, and I think that that is a good sign. So for characters, I did give it a 7.5. I did dock half a point for the fact that the romance wasn't as good, because it is marketed as a fantasy romance, so I did want to take that into account. The plot got a 7.5, the writing got an 8.5, the setting got a 7, and the enjoyment from me got an 8, which ends up at a 7.75, which is a score of 8 for SPFBO. Oh, I lied to you, and I actually liked Humane Society for Creatures and Cryptids better than this, according to my spreadsheet score. So don't listen to what I said. This is my third favorite. But overall, I just really enjoyed this one. Like, I thought it was a fun time read, and I'm happy that I read it. I'm not sure it'll work as much for other judges. I think there's going to be a very hit or miss story whether it worked for you or not. But for me, it was exactly what I needed to finish this off with. It felt like a fresh story. It felt like a fresh world for me to enjoy. Like, the world itself was very unique. The blues, the mages, the humans, and how it was all interconnected. I had a good time. Like, I truly did. I enjoyed the villain in this. I enjoyed a lot. So this is one that I would definitely recommend if you like a more just like easy read that still has like depth and stakes, but it's not like epic in scope. I'll leave my 2 other SPFBO videos on the screen for you if you would like to see my review of my own finalist, and if you'd like to see my reviews of the last couple finalists. Thank you so much to Mark Lawrence for asking me to be a judge again this year. I can't wait to see what wins the competition. I'm pretty early to finishing off all the books, so there's a couple months left to see what all the other judges think. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji, just say you were here. Leave me a blueberry emoji, and have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.